Welcome to The People Make the Places, Mike, May, and Friends, Episode 21, May 2026, The Evolution of Accessible GPS in the U.S. and Down Under. 27 years since Sendero Group was founded and the first accessible GPS came out on a laptop, the hardware has gotten smaller and faster. We had versions on the Braille Note from Humanware, the PackMate from Freedom Scientific, and Sense Navigation. There was even a Braille and Speak Test version from Blazy. Visuade had the Magnum in the mid-90s. There is still a big need for location literacy. The volume of information has increased, but the frustration of the final 50 feet remains a challenge. This episode tells the story of people who were pivotal in the evolution of accessible GPS, like Russell Smith, with influence from many others like Jim Fruchterman, Jim Halliday, Charles Lapierre, Gilles Pepin, Bob Sweetman, Gil Lutz, Chris Nova, Kim Casey, Jerry Coons, and so many more who were early adopters. We are honored in this episode to hear Jonathan Mosen's beautiful reflections on Russell Smith and accessible GPS in his engaging Kiwi accent. We must acknowledge the early research of Doctors Loomis and Gollage from UC Santa Barbara in the 90s. We will start out with the history of accessible GPS, and then have examples of using GPS early on from San Francisco to New Zealand and Australia. We will wrap up the episode with examples of GPS in a variety of fun places and situations. GPS pioneers Mike May and Charles Lapierre began working on accessible GPS in 1994 while at Arkenstone. Their first commercial product was Atlas Speaks, 1995. A pioneering trip planning tool for the PC. Their prototype, Strider, developed with help from the Canadian company Visuade, was a bulky backpack system with a laptop computer at its core and various GPS equipment. As described in the New York Times, using signals beamed from Global Positioning System GPS satellites, Strider combines the features of a map and compass into one talking package. Together, the system can tell people where they are within about 30 feet. Arkenstone eventually determined that Strider was not viable and terminated the project in 1998. May and Lapierre founded the Sendero Group in 1999 to continue their research and development of accessible GPS, beginning with a never-released GPS on the Braille and Speak. Sendero released their version of the Strider called GPS Talk. The GPS Talk fit into a more streamlined backpack system called the ePack. It benefited from the use of wearable computers being developed for the military, such as the Cybernaut, or by 2001 from the compact Braille Note note-taker from Humanware as the brains of the operation. The ePack held several components. A GPS antenna received location data from satellites orbiting the Earth. At the time, all GPS satellites were military. For security reasons, GPS data from these satellites was intentionally inexact. A second beacon antenna received data from a land-based system operated by the U.S. Coast Guard. When available, the beacon system provided much more accurate location information. A third sensor might be connected to a PNS, pedestrian navigation system, such as the Vectronics for indoor navigation. The PNS received data from special fluorescent lights positioned within a building, the way Indoor Explorer receives data from radio beacons. The various antennae sensors would be connected to appropriate receivers, such as handheld GPS receivers from Magellan or Garmin. The receivers would be connected to a CPU, such as the Xbernaut or the Braille Note, either via a CD-ROM or removable compact flash card. Output to the user came via a neck strap fitted with a pair of speakers. And of course, each device in the outfit required various rechargeable battery packs and connector cables. The system was controlled by a wrist-mounted keypad. The first commercially available GPS Talk entered the market 2000 to 2002. While not widely used, the GPS Talk was a harbinger of how useful GPS technology could be if a more practical and easy-to-carry device could be developed. In the meantime, the cell phone was revolutionizing the way people who are blind use devices, miniaturizing and combining many different devices in one. Sendero Group teamed up with Code Factory in 2005 to create Mobile Geo, running on Nokia phones. The first Apple iPhone was released in 2007. The iPhone became accessible when Apple introduced VoiceOver in 2009. Sendero Group introduced its first cell phone application for the iPhone, Look Around, in 2010. Sendero and the American Printing House partnered to create PC Maps for Students, a comprehensive Windows application for exploring maps. Increasingly, Sendero moved away from hardware development and into software and applications of GPS technology. Sendero came out with the Seeing Eye GPS app for the iPhone in 2012. It was called RNIB Navigator in the UK and Guide Dogs NSW in Australia. Sendero Group turned over its smartphone app to Aira and its map products to the SF Lighthouse in 2018. The PH spun off a new company, Access Explorer, in 2019 to focus on indoor navigation. The company was later renamed Good Maps. Good Maps took over the Sendero GPS app from Aira and called it Good Maps Outdoors. Mike May joined the team in July 2019 to help combine the best of all accessible navigation technologies in the form of Good Maps Explorer, released in September 2020, free on both iPhone and Android. What began as Seeing Eye GPS at Sendero in 2012 was transferred from Good Maps to APH in 2025, where Mike May again took it over. Wednesday, August 10th, 2005, tribute to Russell Smith from Mike May and the Sendero Group, reflections and thanks. I am currently on a ski vacation in Chile. As I plunge down a slope, there is a knot in the pit of my stomach, not from the speed of the descent, but from the terrible feeling of loss of Russell to his family and to those of us who had the privilege of working with him. I first got to know Russell when I traveled to Christchurch in 1995 to see about Pulse Data being an open book dealer for Arkenstone. Russell Smith and Mike Peterson exemplified New Zealand hospitality. Russell has been described as the Bill Gates of the adaptive technology industry, and although this may be true in many ways, I can't imagine that Bill Gates is as approachable or accessible as Russell was. Even when I met Russell casually prior to that trip, he would always let me know he was around at the various conferences we would attend, and he and Mike were genuinely appreciative that I would come all the way to Christchurch to court their business. Russell's hospitality and personal touch, beginning with that trip to New Zealand, forged a business and personal connection that would have a huge impact on my life and on those who would in turn benefit from the company I would start in 2000. On July 4th of 2001 at the NFB convention in Philadelphia, Russell and I had our first meeting to evaluate the feasibility of taking the accessible GPS we had developed on the laptop and putting it on the very successful Braille Note. I met the same day with Dick Chandler of Freedom Scientific to discuss the same for their Pac Mate, still on the drawing board. I continued to meet with them both over several weeks, the most memorable of which was a meeting with Russell at a hotel in San Francisco. He had a list of questions to ask me. I would give him an answer, and then there would be a pregnant pause. I couldn't figure out if I should say more or just wait for a response. I soon learned that Russell was very contemplative, and he was simply pondering my answers. He must have liked what he heard. In September 2001, Pulse Data and Sendero Group agreed to collaborate on a Braille Note GPS project. Within 6 months, we had version 1 ready to show at CSUN, and it was shipping soon thereafter in April 2002. Since that time, I have made a trip to New Zealand, as has Charles, both of us enjoying the hospitality of Russell and his team. The Braille Note GPS has graduated to version 3.3, none of which would have happened without Russell's support behind the scene. GPS has always been on the pioneering edge of technology, and its benefits not obvious to all. Everyone enjoying the benefit of this technology today should give some thanks to Russell for recognizing the value of accessible location information. Sendero is largely still in business since its inception in 2000, thanks to the success of the Braille Note GPS and the trust and support of Russell Smith. His impact will carry on in a very tangible fashion as we continue to improve the Braille Note GPS beyond what either of us imagined 4 years ago. Saturday, November 18th, 2006, New Zealand. First day in Auckland, New Zealand. When you only have 4 full days in a country and an entire day flying, one has to hit the ground running. That is just what Carson, Jennifer, Wyndham, and I did in New Zealand. After landing at 4:30 a.m. on Sunday, we made our way to the Hyatt Hotel in downtown Auckland, got cleaned up, and headed outside to explore. Fortunately, the rain stopped and the sun was out by 8 in the morning. It is supposed to be spring here. Ordering breakfast in another English-speaking country is amusing as one sorts out what words mean. A short black could be a rugby player or an espresso coffee. Other items may have the same name but different flavor or texture. Biscuits and gravy would be cookies and gravy in New Zealand. I had the domain as a point of interest from my September visit, so we set that location and wound our way through the Auckland streets. I didn't have New Zealand street maps, only my user points. It was about 2 kilometers. The museum wasn't open until 10 a.m., so we wandered through the domain grounds and stumbled upon the incredible botanical gardens. I loved the section with bright flowers. The boys liked the 4-foot lily pad with spikes. In the museum, my favorite was the 100-foot Maori canoe. The boys liked the volcano simulator. We spent a couple hours perusing 3 floors. We took a different route back to the hotel, once again using the getting warmer method to find our way with the Hyatt set as our destination. There was so much green space. We found lunch on our way. It was more of a challenge to find the city bus to visit our friend Roxanne and family that evening. Thank goodness the 767 bus at the Britomart is marked for future reference. We had a great visit and had fun seeing our boys connect for the first time. On Monday, I flew to Christchurch on the South Island while my family went to the aquarium and explored Auckland. On Tuesday, we all took a tour to Rotorua. The commentary on the bus was fantastic, especially from Barney, who was Maori and quite animated. We visited the Waitomo glowworm caves. It was incredible to see the entire roof of a cathedral cavern covered with glowing lights like solid stars in the sky. The evening was spent feasting in a traditional Maori village with dancing, music, and an education about the Maori ways. The area is surrounded by geysers and small spurts of steam. I enjoyed feeling the carvings from the master carvers. We got our thrills experiencing the Zorb, an 8-foot beach ball which you climb inside with a foot of water and roll down a hill. New Zealand is incredibly friendly and green, ever so green. Friday, October 12th, 2007, on New Zealand's Waiheke Island, Mike, Sherry, and Roxanne enjoy the fruits of the world-class Stone Ridge Vineyard and Cafe after a 20-kilometer ferry ride from Auckland. If you aren't hungry and thirsty after hearing the menu and wine description, you can't have been listening. My favorite way to experience a place is to walk and eat, and that is exactly what we did. Friends for 25 years, it was pretty amazing to meet in New Zealand and to have an incredible day together. I know from the Sendero GPS that we walked 8 kilometers. Many places are now marked on the roads, towns, and beaches. We lucked into a day of sunshine between rainstorms. The highlight of the day was a fantastic meal where the excellent food was matched only by the fantastic company. How fortunate can one be? Mike and Charles go into orbit on a bungee ride in New Zealand. Not your typical hang-by-your-ankle bungee. There is a set of 3 connected seats which are strapped to huge rubber bands. You shoot straight into the air while reaching speeds of 120 miles per hour, 200 kilometers per hour. Various quotes from the audio recording, "Holy mackerel," and "felt like you were being shot out of a cannon."
I'm Jonathan Mosen, and I serve as Executive Director for Accessibility Excellence at the National Federation of the Blind. I'm very pleased to accept Mike's invitation to be on the People Make the Places to discuss my thoughts on the advancing of GPS technology for blind people. I love the title of this podcast because not only do the people make the places, the people make the technology as well. Or at least that's been the case until very recently. Who knows where we're going with AI developing the way that it is. But technology historically has been about ideas, the ability to execute on those ideas, and relationships. I think it's essential that we record our history so we don't forget the pioneers who created the early versions of technology that we now use every day without giving it a moment's thought. That technology didn't materialize out of thin air. I had the privilege to have a front row seat watching and to some small extent participating in the integration of Brown Note GPS, the product Mike was the brains behind. I want to go back a little further to begin with, though, and talk about a quiet legend in this industry, so quiet that I don't think he's often given due credit for his significant legacy. Dr. Russell Smith was the founder of the company that was originally called Wormold International Sensory Aids Limited. And if you ever fire up the software on the original keynote released back in 1986, that's the copyright announcement that you'll hear. Russell was made a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit by Queen Elizabeth for his services to blind people. He was one of the most remarkable men I've ever had the honor to know. Incredibly intelligent, a savvy entrepreneur who could seize an opportunity, someone smart enough to know that he needed to surround himself with a capable group of people, capable of being extremely direct and a real pain in the proverbial at times, but none of that's actually why I miss Russell so much. I miss him because he was unassuming, understated, incredibly generous. He possessed a wicked sense of humor, and he was an exceptionally kind man. Russell worked hard and sacrificed much because he believed that what he was doing mattered, and that since he was talking with so many blind people who assured him that he was on the right track, it was worth the sacrifice. In 1988, Russell mortgaged his house to fund a management buyout, and that's when the company's name changed to Pulse Data International. He had the genius to hire one of the most gifted software developers the access technology industry has ever known, Jonathan Sharp, who many of us call the father of Keysoft. Jonathan guided products with Keysoft at their heart for well over 20 years. It's hard to overstate how disruptive the Braille Note was when it was released. The Blazy products were so dominant. They were like the iPhone of blindness technology at the time. And then this upstart company comes along from New Zealand, creates a product based on the modern Windows CE operating system, and just takes the lion's share of the market in a very short time frame. I used the keynote from the very beginning, and I'd often provide feedback. Russell would keep in touch with me over the years, calling me to ask how I thought it was all going. And like most people in the industry, when I devised and hosted Main Menu, which was the first global technology show for the blind community, ahead of a review of the latest Pulse Data product, he'd wonder what on earth is Mosen going to say this time. In response to those reviews, he'd often call me and say, "Mate, if you've got all these bloody ideas, why don't you take charge and put them into action?" I thought he was joking. It turns out he wasn't. And finally, in 2003, I became the blindness product manager at Pulse Data International, where, among other things, I oversaw the development of Braille Note Empower. It was during my time at Pulse Data that I became aware of the Braille Note GPS project. Although Keysoft was based on Windows CE, it was a closed platform, meaning there was no software development kit, no API. Believe me, I did try hard to change that, but Braille Note was such a juggernaut in those days that Russell didn't think it was worth slowing down internal software development to put the work into creating an open Braille Note ecosystem. So anything developed for the Braille Note had to be done with the extensive cooperation of the Pulse Data software engineers. Mike May and Charles Lapierre were key from the Sendero side. Mike had already developed GPS technology for much bulkier platforms, but the idea that it might be possible to do this with a device you could sling over your shoulder was truly exciting. Of course, there was no built-in GPS receiver, so you'd have to carry that as well. So how would it work? How would it integrate into Keysoft? Those were the very geeky but important discussions that Mike and Charles were having with Jonathan Sharp and other developers. It was important to us that the product retained a look and feel consistent with Keysoft. I'd also like to acknowledge another staff member who people will remember if they interacted with Pulse Data mailing lists during that time, and that's Dean Jackson, who did quality assurance and technical support work at the corporate head office. Dean was always a cheerful, personable young guy, blind himself, who loved all the technology. He'd worked closely with Charles to track down bugs. In April 2006, Dean tragically died as the result of a massive epileptic seizure in his mid-20s, and I still feel his loss. Then, of course, you needed the maps, which initially was stored on a compact flash card. If you wanted to store a lot of maps, you might even get a physical hard drive that was put in a compact flash form factor. That was slower than your standard compact flash card, but you could hold a lot of stuff on that thing. There was only one downside as far as I was concerned. I couldn't actually test the full user experience myself because initially there were no maps in New Zealand. It wasn't until quite some time after I'd left the company that by that stage was called Humanware that we got maps for New Zealand for Sendero products. I was so excited the very first time I visited the United States with a copy of Sendero GPS on my Braille note. I couldn't wait to get into a taxi, fire it up and hear about the businesses I was passing, even direct the driver. It was one of those hey wow moments that I will never forget. That's one of the things I remember vividly about those early days, by the way. We would get messages from blind people who were using the product, just feeling a sense of empowerment about what it was facilitating. I remember one person who wrote to us saying that he was on a bus with a driver that had just started the job in the morning and the driver had become hopelessly lost. So the blind guy got out his Braille Note GPS and directed the driver and the whole bus to where he was supposed to be going. Nowadays, that's commonplace, which is a testimony to how far we've come. Many of us take out our smartphones and become the navigator, taking the pressure off a sighted driver and doing our part to help get to our destination. But in those days, the idea that a blind person could direct a sighted person out of trouble was a real novelty. We would try different kinds of GPS receiver, and of course the smaller the better, and during my time at Pulse Data International, we entered into a partnership agreement with Baum. Now Baum wanted us to promote their Braille products in markets where we were strong, and in return, Baum would promote our low vision products in market where Baum was strong. Win-win. Baum had a cute little device they called Pronto. I don't think its default software was anything to write home about, but the hardware was spectacular. I think it was one of the best note-takers ever created, actually, and it also ran Windows CE, so we put Keysoft on it and I called it Braille Note PK, PK standing for Pocket, and it was perfect for GPS because of its size. Those of you who were around at the time will recall that following Russell's death in a light plane crash, my move to Freedom Scientific was the topic of more than a little bit of discussion. When I became the Vice President of Blindness Hardware at Freedom, I inherited Street Talk GPS for PackMate. PackMate was more open than Braille Note because PackMate ran Pocket PC with a version of JAWS for that operating system. Street Talk, I believe, did have New Zealand maps the moment I started to use it, and we worked with them to create a blindness-specific solution. But when the company producing the product went out of business, I worked with Mike again, this time to get Sendero GPS on the PackMate. And now that I'm not responsible for it anymore, I can say that the PackMate QWERTY version, particularly when you had a Braille display attached to it, was a really large device. These days, of course, we have GPS on our smartphones, no external receiver required. Some solutions are blindness-specific and others are not. It's not the first time that the mainstream market has caught up with technology blind people were using years before. The note taker itself is an example of this. We were taking electronic devices with us to manage our appointments and read books long before they were commonplace anywhere else. We often lead the way. Thanks to Mike, Russell, Charles, and other key players, we found ourselves where, increasingly, we literally were leading the way. For centuries, blind people have been exploring the world. We don't need technology to do that, but all human beings have different skill sets, blind or not. We all have things that we think are easy that other people struggle with. Just as is the case for sighted people, access to GPS has been an equalizer, but I think it's even more than that. In unfamiliar areas, blind people have historically been deprived of instant information about what's around us, the names of intersections, the businesses we're passing. Blindness-specific GPS delivered that to us. It's yet another example of how the best people to solve challenges blind people face are blind people ourselves, in conjunction with sighted allies who understand that when it comes to self-determination, it's only right that we lead the way.
Wednesday, October 29th, 2008, Sendero GPS released in New Zealand. 8 years since Sendero released the first accessible GPS, we are pleased to finally have street maps available in New Zealand. Ironic, since we began working with Humanware with the Braille Note in 2001. Better late than never. Sendero, Humanware, and the Royal New Zealand Foundation of the Blind celebrated this new form of independence in Auckland, October 29th. Over 100 people attended the reception, where they had a chance to see and hear the accessible maps and to toast the collaborative efforts to bring this technology to New Zealand. After comments from Mike May of Sendero, Morris Sloan of Humanware, and Neil Jarvis from RNZFB, Stevie Wonder spoke about the importance of accessibility. He graciously talked and took pictures with attendees. At least 2 television stations were filming.
Many things in life happen that bring people together. And Mike and I met some years ago, but we connected again and become very, very special friends. I believe that our commitment is the same, and that is making sure that in our lives we can individually and collectively spread the message of accessibility for the blind. A lot of things that people that can see take for granted is the most important is a feeling of being independent.
Thursday, October 30th, 2008, Michael Field. Stevie Wonder launches GPS system. American superstar Stevie Wonder loves technology and what it can do for the blind. It's a feeling of being independent, he told an Auckland gathering, to launch a New Zealand version of a GPS system for blind users. A Californian company, Sendero Group, developed the remarkable device, which not only gives voice directions to its blind users, but is also a powerful internet-linked computer. Wonder is an old friend of Sendero founder Michael May, who confessed he used the launching of the New Zealand version of the GPS system to catch the Stars Christchurch and Auckland concerts. It coincided with Blind Week, the Royal New Zealand Foundation of the Blind's annual appeal. As a measure of his fan quality, May said, Apple iPods have only in the last month become blind accessible after lawsuits in the United States. He got one, and the first thing he loaded up was 585 of Stevie's songs. Wonder, a big user of technology, said he wanted to spread the message of accessibility for the blind. It is so very important in the sighted world, and those in the various places of technology understand that by doing this, you are getting a kind of freedom you cannot even imagine. Technology was making life easier while being fascinating and exciting. It's a wonderful thing. Life is about creating joy and making things better. The GPS system, which fits onto a Braille, interfaced and sound-enabled device that also provides internet and email, gets the user into the vicinity of where they are going. It doesn't make me a blind robot, he said. The Sendero devices come with a look-around mode that announces to users what is around without the need to enter commands. He lost his vision in a chemical explosion, but said he had long come to terms with it. In fact, it is more about living life to its fullest, he said. If one has a good family, a good job, feels good about themselves and all of those positive things, it doesn't matter if you are blind or sighted. Stevie Wonder performs at Vector Arena tonight. Monday, February 13th, 2012, Exploring Auckland. I am currently in Auckland, New Zealand, en route to the International Mobility Conference on the south of this island. I don't think I'll ever get over the enjoyment and independence of exploring with the GPS. I have been in New Zealand several times before dating back to 1995. It is fun to see intersection points I marked back in the day when we didn't even have street maps, not to mention favorite restaurants or pedestrian footpaths. I think we will go look for the Sky Screamer, which Charles and I tried several years ago before heading to the airport. No telling what else we will come across in the process. International Mobility Conference 2012, Mike May attended the 14th International Mobility Conference held in Palmerston North, New Zealand. The theme for IMC 14 was Mobility Through the Ages, Up, Over, and Down Under. As such, they featured the newest trends, practices, and information related to the acquisition of independent travel for children, adults, and older adults. Mike gave a presentation about accessible GPS options and later led an accessible GPS treasure hunt group to tour the streets surrounding the conference. Mike's GPS treasure hunt was also featured in Massey University's News Blind Treasure Hunt, Bionic Eyes at International Mobility Conference, Wednesday, February 15th, 2012. FYI, I am now in Sydney to explore some more. It has been one of the coldest, wettest summers in this part of the world, but it is in the 80s now. To the Wayback Time Machine. Speaking of the 80s, long before GPS in 1985, I took my first trip to Australia to visit a friend, Ann Myers Turpin. I have fond memories of the people we met, including our hosts near Sydney, Carol, and Walt Tierney. Every time I've gone to Australia, I visit one of the petting zoos. The bird sounds are amazing. I loved petting a visually impaired albino kangaroo. I even got to feed a bottle to a baby tiger. Hiking has always been a big part of exploring this diverse country. Adding accessible GPS 23 years later further enhanced my independence.
It's now Sunday evening, April 7th, and we had a wonderful day over at the sister Rose and Jim of Carol and Walls, and went out for a sail. Got to see a surfboard, windsurfer for the first time. Ate lots of food, and got some sunshine. Beautiful day.
The problem that Eastern Suburbs are having in defence is their two centres are getting caught on the one side. We can see here now that both John Byrne and Ron Gibb are on this defensive right-hand side of the field, and Canterbury is simply working the ball one way, then firing it back the other way and catching them short. More than that.
April 8th is out for a stroll on Lake Mercury, I think it's called. Fish are jumping, people are fishing. This is, I guess, out for an Easter Monday drive. Met a gentleman with 5 dogs who was out for a 2.5 mile stroll. He goes out every day.
Good day.
Tuesday, April 9th, in the Blue Mountains.
Can't see anything going.
This is great.
It might be worse going down, actually, huh? I'm not quite sure I like the way it jerks around. Especially that you can see through the bottom, you can see the rails down there.
Well, here we are after a wonderful day hiking down and riding up the funicular, and 916 steps and 2.5 miles later.
52-degree railway.
That's right. Here we are, and it's pouring rain. We made it in just in the nick of time.
Squeak. Oh, there goes. Looks really silly.
What?
That skyway thing. Interesting, there's like a big cable that it slides on. That's the one that's not moving. And then there's 2 little cables that were the ones that were moving. That thing fell. I don't think I'd ever stop screaming. Goes right over the falls.
Wynn's Coonawarra Estate, Cabernet Sauvignon.
It's now Thursday, April 11th.
These carriages form the 1021 train to Sydney, which will depart from number 2 platform. Train now standing at number 2 platform, the 1021 train to Sydney. This train stops all stations to Penrith, then Parramatta, Strathfield and Sydney.
Actually, it was just by a fluke, wasn't it, Les?
Yeah.
Was cracked or something?
Yeah, cracked.
Put some nail polish over it to seal it.
Ah. Otherwise it would have died probably, huh?
Probably, yeah.
Just touch it, Michael.
The colors in this mic are just beautiful, beautiful blues.
She's so small without a feather, you know, no down.
And the tail goes down about 2 feet lower than that.
2 feet? Give me a kiss. Give me a kiss.
Oh, you're a lot braver than I am. Their beaks, Mike, are kind of, they're really curved, so like if that's the top part of the beak, and then this is the bottom part, it goes completely open. It's not pointy like that. It's very,
it curves over.
yeah, it makes like a round circle when they're together.
To the owl one or
No.
Does it look like an owl?
Well, it's a nitro. What do you think of the whip of the world?
Well, it's
in
the
America?
Yeah.
eyes.
That's a
sort of
nitro,
like
isn't it?
an owl's really, don't
I don't know
Yeah.
my birds.
Well, it's related to that one.
Can you hold his mouth open and let Michael see? He's got a little tongue inside him.
Oh my goodness.
I'll pull it up for you, Michael. Very fine little tongue.
It's almost
Feel it,
like a
man?
leaf.
Oh yeah?
And inside the mouth's all yellow.
Yeah, it's beautiful inside of a mouth. As
Say
far as
hi.
inside of mouths go.
That's such a very big bird.
And when they sit in the tree, you can't see them, Michael. They look like a stump.
They just fade into it?
Yeah.
Here's a recap of some of the other highlights that I missed. One was going to the Taronga Zoo. A friend of Ann's, Larry Ladd, took us around. We went to the bird area and held some kind of frog-mouthed nocturnal bird. Felt his tongue, felt a cockatoo and a macaw. Checked them all out. Then went down and felt a Sumatra tiger, felt a kangaroo, held them in a pouch, and then some tree possums, and then felt a wombat in its pouch, felt the wallaby, and then a joey kangaroo. Then we went off to the meeting with Andrew Goldfinch, his compatriot Simon there. He took us for a ride into town. Went by the Didgeridoo Records and then Folkways. Went to a nice Indian restaurant for dinner. Then next morning, then we went back to this great old CB private hotel. Next morning we got the car hooked up with Sue. We drove 250, 300 kilometers down to Canberra. In Canberra we saw the War Memorial. We looked at the embassies. Then on April 14th, 9 p.m., after several beers, Ann and I parted and I headed back.
Saturday, February 18th, 2012. More about GPS in Australia. Once again, I really took advantage of the GPS to explore independently yesterday. Having user points was really helpful in finding the exact ticket window for the Manly Ferry and even finding the steps to Manly Beach once we got there. I remembered there was a really cool restaurant on the beach, but not the name. I was able to search the nearby user points and was reminded once I came across the restaurant name. And the same happened when looking for this really good wine shop in order to bring a bottle to dinner with local friends having us over to dinner. Then, of course, there was finding their house and making sure the taxi driver took the best route. It was pretty darn nice to be able to come off that ferry and find all of these things 100% independently in an unfamiliar, busy city. I will say the Navtech commercial points of interest aren't wonderful, something that would be true on both the Sendero GPS, Trekker, and Captain, since we all use the same data. Now for some fun examples of accessible GPS introduced by Frank DeFord, a famous sports commentator. You will hear the brief sounds of Mike and Charles on the Skyscreamer in Auckland. I include a fun navigation piece from the show, Mythbusters, featuring early GPS user and teacher Jerry Coons.
The Sendero Group welcomes you to a new world of accessible location information. Visually impaired founders of Sendero have been developing accessible GPS for the blind since 1994. Blind person's toolbox of alternative tools and techniques should now include an accessible GPS. Some tools are for mobility, and some are for orientation.
Creating pedestrian road. Turn right on Sycamore Lane heading north.
Then the challenging part, choosing and purchasing the appropriate tools, and then learning how to use those tools. Hey, are we having fun yet? Go ahead and ask yourself, are we having fun yet? But it's best to hear about the value of location information directly from blind college students, a mobility instructor, and a retired teacher as they explore the road to independence using their GPS tools.
Paige Bolden, student.
Attaboy. Left. Okay, it's finals week, and I want to go get some coffee at the closest Pete's. Space D.
Destination set to Pete's Coffee Tea.
So now we want to plan a route there. So I'm going to press an R.
Route commands list.
I'm going to push a P.
Creating pedestrian route. Route created.
Okay, right?
G.
Inside.
I.
Oh, it just said we arrived at our destination.
You want to go right?
Finally. Good job, Lance.
San Francisco, one of the great cities of the world. Everywhere you look, there's something new to see. But what if you can't see? One of the best guides of this beautiful city is this man, Jerry Coons. And he's blind. Jerry has built his walking tours business around a system called BrailleNote. Essentially, a highly accurate GPS coupled with a PDA and Braille keyboard programmed with just about every tourist spot in the United States.
So, Anna, I think the best way to really understand how this all works is for you to try it. I just happen to have a blindfold. Would you put this on and then see what it's like to navigate with hearing?
Okay. I'm in San Francisco with a blindfold.
But see, I carry this around because whenever I see there's an attractive woman, I hand her the blindfold and say, take my arm.
Does that work?
Well, it did, didn't it?
Along with street names, major buildings and tourist attractions, the BrailleNote has listings of restaurants, bus and tram stops and everyday facilities like ATMs. It's accurate within 10 metres or 30 feet, and it alerts you within 200 feet when you approach them, or you can prompt for information at any time.
We're on Montgomery, headed down towards the Transamerica Pyramid Building, and we can find out exactly how far.
155 meters to a clock.
Oh, I've got to take a look at it. That's huge.
I can ask BrailleNote where we are, and it says
73 kilometers, 1 o'clock for Golden Gate Bridge, South Tower, West.
Oh, I can't come to San Francisco without seeing the Golden Gate Bridge. Oh, wow, it's gorgeous. Well, I must say I've really enjoyed my blindfolded tour of San Francisco. It's one thing to come to a city and see all the sights that you see in the postcards, but it's a completely different experience to have the smells and the sounds intensified. And the braille note here gave me that little bit of reassurance that I needed. It told me where I was every time.
Geocaching at a mobility conference.
I'd heard about geocaching, and I knew that GPS was one of those things that when you teach it, if you can find fun ways to teach it, it comes across so much easier. And geocaching seemed like an automatic game built in. And the fact that it was worldwide and that blind people could play it alongside their sighted friends and family, it just made all the sense in the world. We call this a treasure hunt. It's really the same as a geocaching course, but with our own twist.
Monument of the Immortals, bonus 60 feet.
And it's important that they see how it operates, how fun it is, so that they will in turn think of teaching it to their kids. This kind of accessible GPS information gives us what we call location literacy.
Cool, fine. It says, may peace prevail.
And nobody would find the sucker if they didn't have the GPS, because who's going to be feeling every post that you pass?
This is perfect.
Mythbusters blind driving episode.
Not only have they found the ideal location, but also the ideal driver, Jerry.
Jamie, howdy. Glad to meet you.
Hey, man, good to meet you.
So you're here to do a little driving for us, I understand.
I certainly am.
Well, there are different kinds of blindness. There's legally blind as per the definition, and then there's can't see a darn thing blind. What are you?
No light, no nothing.
That's perfect. Are you ready to drive?
Hoo-yah!
More gas. That looks good. Okay. It's a good speed.
Wow, he's going about 20 miles an hour now. This is for real, man.
A little more gas.
Traveling over the limit in a residential area. Jerry is officially speeding.
35 miles an hour.
Jerry's final test requirement could be the toughest.
Now comes the last obstacle, parking.
Start to brake. Now turn hard left.
But it looks like Jerry will successfully avoid traffic school.
And stop. You made it.
And you all made it through episode 21. I hope we have busted some of the myths of how accessible GPS evolved, thanks to all of the HumanWare and Sendero teams who were part of this fun ride. Blindness organizations provided testing, like the National Federation of the Blind, along with funding from the Seeing Eye, RNIB, and Guide Dogs NSW of Australia. I'm thankful to Larry Scootcon and the American Printing House for their contributions to accessible navigation in the past and to Indigo Nav today and in the future. When I set out to create accessible GPS in 1999, my goal was to make it ubiquitous and free. For the first couple years, Sendero Group had no competition. I was just seen as Mike May on his GPS soapbox. I am proud that we spawned several competitive hardware products and eventually free smartphone apps. When I asked Jim Fruchterman about shutting down Sendero Group in 2018, he said, "You have achieved your goals. Declare victory and move on." These organizations and people have made the places and made the technology a team effort. It is exciting how far we have come in 32 years, and for all of the advancements to be worked on in upcoming decades, which AI will be a big part of, we certainly achieve independent travel and have fun in the process when we live by the Sendero motto.
It is better to travel hopefully than to arrive.